your own, girl. She's always like, I don't know if I can do it or say it, and then she just nailed it. So you don't need me here. Okay, well, I'm grateful for the invitation to speak on this topic that I think is so important, because our state and our legislators are deceiving us when it comes to education, including our governor, who's going around Texas pushing school choice. And so I'm going to start, I want to tie the connection between UNESCO's agenda for education, which is number 4 in the Sustainable Development Goals, but I want to tie that to the school choice movement and help connect the dots there, because I think people think it's a separate issue, that they think school choice is a conservative agenda, and it's not. It's a global agenda. So we have 2 legislators. I believe Creighton is some of your reps, right? You're a senator, okay. And then Brad Buckley is in Killeen area, so that's House District 54. Well, what these two legislators have in common is they've both been heads of, or chairs of the education committees for their respective roles. So Brad Buckley is over the House Public Education Committee, and Brandon Creighton was over the Senate. So the other thing they have in common is that they both pushed the House and Senate version of House Bill 1605 and the school choice bills. So you have House Bill 1605, which in the Senate was 2565. Then you have the 2 school choice bills, House Bill 1, Senate Bill 1. Neither of the school choice bills passed, but the governor has made it his goal to unseat the Republicans, the incumbents who were against his school choice agenda. He's traveled the state trying to sway and convince voters to unseat those. So on the surface, it looks like he's getting rid of the rhinos, but really it has nothing to do with the other votes that they had. It all has to do with just school choice. So I'll cover briefly the Open Education Resources Bill, which is House Bill 1605, and why that's important is because it falls under the UN's Sustainable Development Goals number 4 for education, and they defined the term open education resources, which is found in that bill. So, but before I get into that, you all know about the Sustainable Development Goals. The John Birch Society has done a phenomenal job, especially with that book, Unity, and what was it, Tyranny, the United Nations manual that you have back there. And I also have a manual or a brochure that you all pass out that is really good. It has the goals on the cover. And I've seen over the years, like this top left where it says language, sowing the seeds of global citizenship. They're trying to make global citizens out of our children and detach them from being American citizens and being proud of their country to global citizenship, and elevating that over over American sovereignty and allegiance to America. So the bulletin board I have on the top left is what I saw in one of our junior highs. I live in Dallas, and my kids went to Richardson schools, and that was in one of our junior high schools. The bottom left is, it was Dallas College has this brochure sitting in the lobby, and it has the outline of the tiles for the global citizenship. And then this umbrella that is here, I think, is a good illustration of what the goal is, and the overarching goal is to fold all children, all students under this plan. And so the way to capture those who are outside of the system is to dangle the money carrot. So under Every Student Succeeds Act, which passed under Obama, that would incentivize all children, homeschool, charter school, public school, private school, will be under this umbrella. We're just not quite there yet because we haven't passed government regulated school choice. And you're welcome to stop me if you have a question. I don't mind this being interactive if something doesn't make sense. You all already know what UNESCO is. This is a slide that I keep in when I do presentations, but you might not know that it was the brainchild of Julian Huxley, who was a eugenicist, and he coined the term transhumanism, and his brother wrote Brave New World. That is where we're heading with the children in our schools, is a Brave New World. Education technology is a huge push in our schools. It's a major reason why we're in debt in our local school districts, because of bond debt to pay for the devices, which are bearing no fruit. We spend more money year over year. The technology has not moved the needle. We learned that during the pandemic, yet we continue to push this innovation. And most of the education technology, not only in the lobbyists and the vendor, the investors, it's mostly coming from the right, which is scary. Anyway, the U.S. joined UNESCO at its founding in 1945, withdrew, so we've kind of gone back and forth. You know, Trump is in office, we get out, then we get back in, depending on the president. So we're always under that threat. 2002 is when they coined the term open education resources. So I was tracking our commissioners' agenda to usher in this vendor called Amplify. And it came in through a $50 million no-bid contract with the state agency in 2020, when we were all in the pandemic under lockdowns. And he slid that in as a no-bid contract. Well, that morphed into the House bill that passed, which is House Bill 1605. That was a $2.44 billion bill. But UNESCO coined this term because the goal is to shift resources away from textbooks to technology. And so UNESCO put that out in the lexicon. So Texas has now aligned itself, because open education resources was mentioned almost 60 times in that bill carried by Brad Buckley and Senator Brandon Creighton. And adoption of open education resources is necessary for the advancement of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. In order to have a global curriculum, this global education system, they must coerce us into adoption at the local level. It's not like they come in through the front door and go, hey, we're going to give you a global curriculum in your schools. The IB schools do that, but for the most part, our traditional public schools do not do that. But it is here, it's coming in through the legislature, and it's our Republican-dominated legislature. It's not the left doing this, it's the right. So the Amplified bill, I mentioned that before, $2.44 billion fiscal note. We spent more on that than we did on the border. So think about where our governor's, his priorities are. Look at it and compare it to our Republican priorities. They ignore those. And these bills have nothing to do with what we, the people on the ground. I'm a precinct chair, and they don't want to do what we want them to do. We, the people, going to the convention and stating our preference on these priorities. And number 1 through 8, we did successfully get school choice bumped down at convention to number 9. So we're going to continually put that in their faces, that the Republican Party does not want school choice as number 1 on the agenda. It's 1 through 8, which you all probably have those memorized. So Buckley denied that it was a technology vendor bill, but if you read the bill, it's clear that technology is a major driver of the goal, or the agenda. I mentioned that Morath steered the $50 million no-bid contract. What I didn't mention was Amplify, the major investor in Amplify is Steve Jobs' widow, Lorraine Powell Jobs. So you can look up Emerson Collective, Amplify. And Amplify's morphed because the name. They've rebranded it multiple times because the mommies get wind of it, and we expose it. We read what's in it, and we expose what's in it. And then they rebrand it and change the name. So it's gone from Amplify to, no, it's Texas Amplify. We bought the rights to it, and it's ours, we own it, we can change it. And then it's changed to Gateway, Texas Gateway, and now it's Texas Bluebonnet. So you'll see a major campaign for Texas Bluebonnet. I mean, what a great name, you know, Texas Flower. Okay, and also the thing that Aaron had mentioned is the work that I've done on exposing the data mining, the data harvesting. that's the thing that's going on behind the scenes that we don't understand is happening. We're just seeing that the child is given this device, they're supposed to be moving through this curriculum, but it's what's happening behind the scenes and that metadata that's being collected on all children. And our state has mined more student data than any other state, and education is the most data mineable industry to date. So thinking about every click can be monetized, everything a child does online can be monetized. But more importantly, they're collecting data on that student that violates their privacy. The unintended consequences of 1605. One is, I mentioned that the definition of OER is to shift away from textbooks to technology. And the reason they're doing that is because it's much easier to have every child on a device moving in the same direction. You cut out the human teacher and the human interactions, and there's massive amounts of data that can be collected. And the software vendors and the technology vendors, they laugh all the way to the bank. OER is dynamic and modifiable, and that's part of the sales pitch. That's so easy. If something changes in a textbook, you can't modify that without issuing new textbooks and then a whole new cash cow of books coming out. So they'll pitch it as it's free, it's dynamic. The TEA can change this, they can modify this, and I look at it as revisionist history is much easier, and what we really want is for our 15 State Board of Education members to review the textbooks and make their recommendations and vote on that adoption so that those are vetted. With OER, that gives enormous power to the Texas Education Agency Commissioner, and then that's where a lot of the checks and balances go out the window. The expense is enormous, I already mentioned that. It aligns Texas with UNESCO. They'll say it doesn't, but it does. If they didn't want to align with UNESCO, why did they use UNESCO's term? We're Texas. Come up with your own individual name for something that, these free printable materials. No, I'm not buying it. They can't enforce a statewide curriculum by law because we do have independent school districts that have the right to make the decisions. But the way to make them do anything, your school district will do just about anything if you dangle the money carrot. So you can bribe them with grants. Grants are bribes. I review the grants are bribes. And you can make my school district do just about anything by dangling the money carrot. And Bill Gates has been probably the main driver of grants as bribes in Texas. TEA pays Educate Texas millions per year, and that's how he funnels his grants through Educate Texas and then to the school districts. OER is a vehicle to usher in a universal and global education system. I mentioned that before. It removes the free market, and I think this is an interesting component because as Republicans and conservatives, we are champions of the free market, right? Free market principles. But this actually removes the free market and makes the state, it gives the state a monopoly on the curriculum and the instructional materials. We busted, Creighton's office told us in 2022 before the bill came out, his staffer said, yeah, we're working on a statewide curriculum. She actually admitted it. And here on the Office of Educational Technology website of the U.S. Department of Education, it says, one is OER will increase equity, and at the bottom it admits to reallocating the money away from textbooks to technology. So the book battles, that's a moot point, so don't waste your time. I mean, sure, you can check out a dirty book and throw it out from your public schools and your libraries, but really that's a moot point because the libraries, they're getting rid of the librarians, they're getting rid of the books. It's all about media centers and technology. So that will resolve itself. Unfortunately, you can't do anything about the dirty Chromebooks and the things that children are seeing online through the state-issued devices. And there's a huge push right now, and it sounds good. Got to get those kids off the cell phone. We have a cell phone ban in this district and a cell phone ban in that district. That's the parent-issued device, and I would agree that they are a huge, huge problem. Those of you with children and grandchildren, you know that screen addiction is real. But if you take away the parent-issued device, what about the government-issued device that they're on? Sometimes 4 to 8 hours a day. So in the bill, baked into the House Bill 1605 was a minimum of 4 hours of OER. So they'll say it's not screen time, that they're printing these manuals, that it's paper. But I'm telling you, the way it works in the school districts, they default to the technology devices because they don't have to deal with the printer issues. They don't have to beg for paper and printing rights. They will go straight to the devices. And Amplify or Texas Bluebonnet, all of those resources are free online for them to download. And even homeschoolers can use this, which I would say beware. Oh. Okay, this meme, I ripped it off from Current Revolt because I think it speaks volumes of our globalist governor. He's like, yeah, just today I have made school choice a priority, meanwhile our border is wide open.
Yes.
So anyone who's advocating for school choice is basically saying that's more important than all these other issues because it sucks all the oxygen out of the room at the legislature. It's all anybody talks about. You've got the, those who are for vouchers, those who are against vouchers. We get mired in the culture wars, and they're laughing all the way to the bank, all these bills, that they make so much money on. We're not addressing the top 8 priorities of the Republican Party. And then it's Abbott who appointed this Marxist commissioner, Mike Morath. And Mike Morath is a software entrepreneur. He's not an educator. He was appointed by the governor to head one of the largest education agencies in the nation. And he's been there for 8 years. So if education has continued to decline, which it has, and spending has continued to go up, which it has, hires at the TEA, the bloated agency, all up under his watch. There's no one over Mike Morath other than our governor. There's no checks and balances. So if we have a problem in education over the last 8 years, you can blame our governor. Start with him. Yes, sir.
Jeff Yass.
Jeff Yass.
So
yes.
He failed to get this in Pennsylvania, I think he's from.
Correct.
He failed to get school choice in Pennsylvania. He's the biggest proponent. He's given the biggest donation in world history to the governor.
$6 million.
But what is his financial interest? I can guess, but I don't know what he's into. Can you?
So there is a correlation that I'm starting to pick up on with casinos and digital currency and vouchers and those who are proponents of all of those things. They're starting to coalesce. And so I'm watching what's happening in Dallas with the casino lobby, some of the same people. My spidey sense says that they're going to collapse the US dollar, make our dollar worth nothing, drive up inflation and the dependence on the government, while also bringing in digital currency. And you can put the school voucher dollars on a wallet, a digital wallet. There's been a pilot done through the pandemic for special needs kids. They always, take the most vulnerable children to pitch these things.
Yeah.
So if I had to guess, I think they know where we're going with that, the virtual currency.
So it's a banks to play. But...
Yeah, and at the heart, vouchers are banking schemes. If you read The Devil in the Details, education savings accounts, those are banking schemes. Just like charter schools are real estate deals, but they'll say, oh, it's for those kids to get them out of trapped and failing schools. That's just the marketing. So you have to really look behind the curtain. Who's investing in it? How much? What do they get out of it? There's a lot of money to be made in education. It's just not going to the teachers and the students. So yeah, that's a great point. Why are these people out-of-state investors so interested in taking Texas? We have A through F ratings on our campuses, but we can never rate the commissioner and his performance. So I would argue that he gets an F. If you ask me. All right, so this is kind of scandalous. Corey DeAngelis is kind of the poster child. He's a lobbyist for the school choice movement, and Betsy DeVos, she has been paying him for years. He kind of came on the scene out of nowhere. He always looks real dapper, and it looks like he's going clubbing. But he's actually been at the legislature when I've been there to testify against vouchers. He's always for them. He's paid to do it. These people don't do this out of the goodness of their hearts. They actually do it because they're paid to do it. I'm not paid to go there, not paid to read these bills. But he was just recently outed for doing gay porn a few years ago while he was in college. And We don't know where he came from, but he came out of nowhere, and you'll see all of our Republican legislators standing there with pictures of him like he's a celebrity. So he's kind of crawled back out of the public eye, and he also has his profile on the UNESCO website as a policy expert, and he's an avowed atheist, and I don't know why they all put all their energy into rubbing elbows with this guy. That's for you to decide. So when I went to the Republican convention, I thought it was important for us to define the strings, because everyone says they don't want strings. They'll say, I'm for school choice, but I don't want strings. Okay, well, there's no such thing as a school choice bill without strings, because the governor has admitted and vowed he will not sign a bill that does not have strings. And I didn't say it like that. What he said is that we have to have accountability. We can't have homeschoolers just sitting at home watching TV. Okay, well, what that means is accountability. So I'm going to define the strings. Accountability in the public schools means testing, more testing, MAPS testing, evaluations, constant benchmarks, and evaluating the students. But it hasn't moved the needle. So I'm all for accountability, I'm for testing. But the high stakes testing that we do and this online STAR that we do, that's educational malpractice. I would not recommend that. Accreditation is another form of control. It sounds good to know that your private school is accredited, but those entities and the accreditation entities have been co-opted as well. So they're making the private schools jump through a lot of these hoops that you'll see your private schools are going just as woke as your public schools. There's very few options left besides homeschooling, and there are some private schools who do not bow to the accreditation schemes, and they stand firm in what they want to teach, and usually it's the Christian private schools that, if they recognize that, then they say no to it. Yes?
Is there a list of those schools, those Christian schools?
It's a very small list. Most of the Catholic schools have sold out to globalism and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Usually it will be a classical Christian private school, but I don't know the names in Houston. There are very few, though. I would say that you could count on one hand at the most. But in Dallas, we have about 2. Very few. And parents are clueless. They think if they pay for it, it must be excellent, and they don't look at what their kids are learning and how they're learning. All right, and then the accounting, you'll have to report how you spend the money, and they'll say, oh, no strings, but there are strings in the bills. If you read the language, they use terms like, this down the bottom with the administration, CEAO is a Certified Educational Assistance Organization. That's how you have to report how the money is being spent. And what happens when they decide that they don't want you teaching your child a Christian, from a Christian theology? What if they don't want you teaching 1 + 1 is 2? I don't know. I mean, it's a slow creep, and we know how incrementalism works. It also grows the TEA, and it grows the comptroller's office. Glenn Hager is a big supporter of the vouchers, and it's a banking scheme, like I said. So it's run through the comptroller. It grows his agency. And these bills are expensive. On the first slide, House Bill 1 was $34 billion, which thank God it didn't pass. And Senate Bill 1 was $500 million. So these are not free, and they don't, I'll get into the myths in just a second. How am I on time, Ken?
You got
Okay.
9 minutes.
Okay, I can talk fast. But alignment to the UNESCO and World Economic Forum and the global standards, that's really the biggest threat. Assessments do drive academics in the K-12 system, so what gets tested is what gets taught, and so that's really shifted the way we teach away from a classical model like you and I, we all had, and so it's kind of like the tail wagging the dog with the assessments industry. And George Bush pulled Sandy Crest from the Dallas ISD School Board, had him tour the country to push No Child Left Behind, and then Sandy went on to make millions working for Pearson, the testing company. So these bills are usually vendor bills, and Creighton admitted that. He goes, well, aren't all bills vendor bills? And I'm like, do you hear yourself? I mean, at least he was honest. But all bills are vendor bills? That's a problem. Oh, and when they say No Child Left Behind, I think the word spells are interesting. Think about what they mean. No child will be left behind outside this system. All children will have to be folded in and comply, and they will do that through the slow creep of vouchers. So the myths of school choice, I mentioned the strings. Well, there are strings. They're all through the bills. I've not read one bill since 2016 that has ever been clean. No clean bills. So they say it, but they don't actually practice it. They know the governor won't sign a bill without strings, so they're not going to present him a clean bill. It'll drain the public school resources. Well, we could argue why that would be good, but it won't. It actually adds a new taxpayer-funded lane. It doesn't. Now, a child leaving the system, they lose the butts in the seats funding, but vouchers don't take chunks out of the public school budget like people think they would. They think you're going to drain this one to fund this one. No. We pay for another lane of education. So we have public schools we're paying for, and then charter schools we're paying for, and then we've got vouchers that we will be paying for if they pass. And they will also bring in virtual ed, which failed in the last session, but they'll try and bring that in too. So we're going to have 4 lanes of education that we're paying for. Taxpayers will never see the relief. And what does Mark Gollaby always say? Someone should lobby for the taxpayer, right? Okay, competition. You hear a lot about competition on the talking heads on the radio. We know how to bring competition. That'll lift all boats. Competition, no, it doesn't work like that. They never called the public schools a monopoly when we were in schools. They started using marketplace terms because they view it as a captive market of children that they want to access. So when you hear those market terms, you should be concerned that there's money to be made there. It's not about the children, it's not about what they're learning, how they're learning, and who's profiting. It's all about accessing that money, shifting the money from the public into private hands. That's what they want. Surplus. We know that there's no such thing as a surplus. As I learned from Mark Gollaby, that surplus just means overtaxation, and that needs to stop. It will undermine private school autonomy. We've seen that in other states. If they take the money, then they're going to be beholden to the accountability measures. It will impact the homeschooling landscape. It will change how homeschoolers are free and the parents are free to teach their children. It will change that. Once a certain segment of them start taking the money, it will change everything. And we have very good homeschool freedom here in Texas right now. We don't want to mess that up. People will say it's conservative. It's not. Read the fiscal notes and you'll know it's not. I mentioned the banking schemes and the vendors. Corey DeAngelis, one of his big slogans is fund students, not systems. Well, I would agree. Fund the students and pay the teachers, not these systems. But all they're doing is creating a new system. So we don't want that. So I would agree. Fund students, not systems. And then universal. They love to use that language, but they really don't mean universal. They'll say everyone is universally eligible, but not everyone can have the money. They put all these stipulations, like it has to be this child, that you have to be enrolled in public school, you have to pull them out. There's so many layers to the stipulations and the rules that it's not really universal, but it's very much like universal basic income, which we hear about here in Houston. All right, so I do have solutions. I mentioned some of them along the way. Because people are like, well, what do we do if we don't have vouchers to take the money to follow the child? What do we do? And I would argue that we need to fix the public school system. And while that is a long game, because it didn't happen overnight how we got here, once you understand the system was broken on purpose to usher in the fake solution, the counterfeit solution, then you'll be more inclined to want to figure out how did we get here and how do we fix it? Well, one is opt your kids out of the technology, starve the beast, and we need to be training and paying the teachers with the money we save on that wasteful technology. We have 20 years of evidence that will show that it's not moving the needle, so why do we keep trying that? We need to return to books, paper, pencils, pay the teachers with the money, and train them with the money saved on the wasteful devices. You can show up locally to your school board meetings, and because the districts will be deciding whether they're going to adopt this blue bonnet curriculum, and it will be very enticing because the money, they're in deficits right now. They are crying, we don't have the money, we don't have any money. Well, the commissioner knows that this is a great way to get them to adopt this, is to give them the money. And then you have to give them the solution, which is return to what works. And find some of those old retired teachers who know how to teach reading and show them how they're doing it wrong and what they should be doing. And the solutions are simple. The work is hard, but the solutions are simple. It didn't take a $2.44 billion bill to teach y'all to read, did it? No. All right, let's see. SBOE, the state board is voting on OER. It's very controversial. They've inserted Bible verses and Bible stories to tickle the ears of the Republicans. Don't be fooled. It's excerpts of, say, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I would argue they need to be reading the actual book, the whole book, not just excerpts. That's what my daughter had to do, is read excerpts of the Diary of Anne Frank instead of reading the whole book, which I read when I was in junior high. They don't do enough of that. So they will be voting in November to approve the instructional materials under House Bill 1605. If that doesn't pass, it's going to be very interesting to watch, because that's going to put a major wrench in the gears of this UNESCO vision. Oppose voucher legislation and all the bills that are spender bills. We're overbilled in our legislature. No more bills. Follow the money, read the bills. You're all capable of doing that. Find a group that y'all can comb the bills and show up and speak against them. And they don't want to be publicly shamed for their bad votes and their bad behavior. Unfortunately, that works. They don't like that, so we need to keep doing that. Fight local, win national. We have to stand in the gap. You all, I'm preaching to the choir. I know that you're all doing so much. I hope that this sheds light on something that you may not have known or seen, but know that this is coming from our party, that we have to point to the real solutions, not their counterfeit solutions. And then my organization that I'm with is Families Engaged. We have a lot of resources. I just got a resolution passed in Dallas County, which is huge. And we're doing this across the state with different counties. I believe Montgomery County got this passed. But it's basically a resolution, and it says the protection of individual and Texas sovereignty from infringement on the public education system by the United Nations Educational, UNESCO, or the World Economic Forum. And the resolution is fantastic. I can't take credit for all of this. We had a team of people and our Patriot lawyers and people that read it and helped us with it to make sure that the language was tight. But it passed with overwhelming support. And Lieutenant Colonel Alan West has been doing a great job in Dallas County of helping us really return the party back to the people. Any questions? Oh, sorry, I can put that back up if you want to see that. Any questions?
Are
yes.
you gonna have this online somewhere?
Yes, I could do that. I can put it on our Families Engaged site. And I am recording this so that it can be shared with the Dallas JBS group, because I've been there a couple times as a candidate to speak.
So how do we get
Yeah.
that?
To this presentation, I can email you the slides too. I've got business cards I can give you. Just email me and I'll send you the PowerPoint. Yes, ma'am.
Are you familiar with Harmony?
Yes, I am. The Gulen Islamic Charter, that movement, yes. I'm vehemently opposed to that major national security threat. Do you all have a bunch of it? You have a bunch here?
Yes, we do.
And they're
What
growing.
is
They're
it?
building one in my neighborhood next year.
Harmony is a charter school which is paid for by public school dollars, and it's run by Fethullah Gulen, an Islamic, he's an imam who was extradited from he lives in the Poconos, and actually they have 85 in Texas. It's the largest charter schools chain in America, and Dan Patrick's a huge fan. Yeah, national security threat. They send money back to Turkey. They have ties to the coup in Turkey and Erdogan and all that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, in the back.
So with homeschools, how do you see that falling? What things should we look out for when they're trying to change the laws there? Right? Like you say,
Yes.
the
Most, I would say, the homeschool population is kind of split because they're paying so much in property taxes to the government school that they really want that money, that $8,000 or $10,000, whatever it may be. But I'd say more than half of the homeschool population says, nope, I don't want your money, I don't want you seeing what I'm doing, that it's none of your beeswax, I'm the parent, I am the governor or governess over my child, and I don't want your government regulated school choice. But we do encourage parents to anyone can homeschool. We have resources and allies who are doing that, like Ginger Russell. They can show you how to do it even if you work. There are ways of doing it through co-op and partnering with other families. But again, 90% of our kids are in public schools. We're trying to get them to go back to a classical model. Since we're paying for it, we need to be able to direct them to get back to basics. Yes, sir?
So is it basically they're gonna throw money, is that coming from the voucher system? Is that part of the voucher system? Or is that a separate?
Yeah, so voucher, they'll get mired in the semantics, but voucher is money that would follow the child to their chosen private or homeschool. Education savings account is more like a digital wallet of money that they can spend on education. So there's different mechanisms and different ways that the bills are written, but like with an ESA, then a private vendor can collect up to 10% for that contract. So there's big money in the voucher behind the scenes. They're lobbying for it big time. Yes, ma'am.
Two things. First
Yes.
of all, I'm appalled to learn that the UN through UNESCO is involved in our education. It's a one world government, secular, non-biblical, non-God operation. It shouldn't be involved in any of our education. We should be out of the UN. That's number
They're
one. Number two, I'm glad to hear about Alan West. I've been wondering what he's doing. Could you expand a little bit more?
Yes, so he challenged the current, or the GOP chair in the March primary, and she was kind of a Bush Republican, squishy, not a supporter of Trump early on, and eventually came around, but very much a proponent of the money men running the party. And I call them red blazer Republicans. You know, they wear the red blazer, they put on the costume, but they're not really conservative at heart. And so he unseated her, and then I ran against her husband. He was my precinct chair, and so we both unseated those. And we're trying to grow the party, get the precinct, not what do you call them, bench warmers, not seat warmers, but actual people who want to knock on doors and get out the vote and turn around Dallas County, because we don't have any elected conservatives. We don't have any Republicans at all in Dallas County.
Oh my
Elected.
God.
None. Yeah, they've taken over every seat.
I don't see Alan active down here.
Well, because he's now focused just on Dallas County, he is our Republican Party chair for Dallas County only, which covers Garland, Mesquite, and other cities. So he's very active in growing our base in Dallas County and really turning the tide there. That's why. But he did run for governor. The four candidates, they challenged the governor, and I mean, you just can't compete with the coffers that Abbott. Oh, and think about, I'm going to say this one thing. Abbott doesn't help our school board trustees. That's the highest number of elected officials in the nation. If he really wanted to turn Texas red, wouldn't he use his big money that he gets from these donors to turn school board races aren't that expensive. He could flip all those seats red. Think about that. What does he do? No, he goes after the red. It's right on right that he goes after. Think about that. Yes?
Where's Paxton on this?
Paxton is a huge proponent of school choice. Right after he was acquitted from that kangaroo court, which I of course supported him and not the illegal impeachment. But the next day he was tweeting about school choice. So there is some, and his wife is a huge proponent of this, and they both have had really bad bills for technology when he was in the legislature. He opened the door for a lot of bad stuff, unfortunately, but I mean, he's the best AG in the nation, so what do we do, you know? But he's wrong about school choice, very wrong.
Isn't there a video of Abbott admitting that there will be minimal strings attached to it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have that on video. He was in Dallas County, he said that the press asked him, the press asked him, well, what about accountability or something like that? And he said, well, we can't, that's when he said that we can't have kids just watching TV. And so then he turns to the school administrator and he says, what are you using? And she said, MAPS testing. So if you go down the rabbit hole on what NWEA MAPS testing, it's not just academic, but affective domain. Attitudes, values, beliefs, behaviors, social emotional learning. They're testing that, and that is baked into the federal. Oh, and I didn't say this. We need to reject federal funds, and then we need to attack the TEA and reject their intrusion. Instead of going after 1,200 school districts, attack the mothership. Get rid of that. We don't need it, and we don't need the 20 education service centers that are pushing the technology, and he's funneling and laundering money through the service centers to bribe the districts. Yes, Mark?
So, what are your thoughts on having a no child in district tax exemption to go through there and parents who opt out their kids out of the public education?
Of all the school choice bills, that is the best option because the money doesn't leave your property taxes. The problem is there is a problem with the constitutional aspect of it, and it's been a while since I explored that. There was a woman who, what was her name? But she had a pretty good bill for that, but there were issues with it, and I think it's because you can't, since the Constitution, the Texas Constitution, Article 7 says we have to make provision for public free schools, and they can't do that plan without, I don't remember the details of it, but there's something wrong with it, which is why they didn't push that one. They can't make it work constitutionally, and she even admitted that. But it sounds really good. Just don't take my money in the first place, and follow it. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'll give you my business card if you want me to send you this presentation. Otherwise, go to familiesengaged.org and we'll have it on there under sources, I believe, or resources.
Thank you. All right, our next meeting, the last one for calendar 2024, will be November 21st. And that's the one Thursday before Thanksgiving, till the third Thursday. And the speaker will be State Representative Mark D'Orazio, North San Antonio. He's going to talk